恭敬大德善听，为四法为记一切众生，经转妙法轮，教导我们如何疗伤脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Well, the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputoche. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, ending 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 life, Medicine Master Buddha. Medicine Master does come one. 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 Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Realm Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back. This is lecture number 133 of our exploration of the Dharma. Okay, as I get today's slides ready, does anyone, as usual, we open with asking for questions. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to bring up? Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, Ron.
That question that I asked you, so you have a bad habit and you said aversion is not the right way to get rid of it. But how about the thoughts that keep popping up? You know, how do you handle the thoughts that pop up with with that habit?
Okay, thanks for asking, Ron. If you don't mind, could you please type it into the chat box so that I will not forget?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, so today we are continuing, and we should be finishing by today, the topic about mindfulness of renunciation or generosity Sorry, excuse me. And what we're going to do today is we are going to see how a Bodhisattva practices giving to the point that he actually perfects the practice of generosity. And where does this happen? This happens on the first ground when you are like an entry level Bodhisattva, although in terms of practice, you're far from entry level. But as an entry level Bodhisattva on the first ground, there are 10 grounds altogether. Someone like Guanyin Bodhisattva is on the 10th ground already. So on the first ground, the practice that the Bodhisattva perfects is the practice of generosity. So let's look at how what is said. So this is from the Avatamsaka Sutra, and it says, "Son of the Buddha," this is the Buddha speaking. So it says, "When in accordance with just such great compassion and great kindness as this, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva avails himself of deep and profound resolve and dwells on the first ground, he becomes free of any selfish cherishing for anything at all." That means there's nothing that he wants for himself at the expense of others. It pursues realization of the Buddha's great knowledge and cultivates the great relinquishing through which he is able to bestow whatever he possesses as a gift. So on the first ground, you kind of can see the whole path laid out in front of you. You know you're not there yet, but you can see what's required on the path to becoming a Buddha. So, but you know your own shortcomings as well. So you know what you need to work on. So what he does is he cultivates the great relinquishing through giving away, and so whatever he has, he gives away as a gift. And the reason why he does it is to the main intention is to not just become a Buddha, but actually that's kind of secondary. The main intention is to help other living beings walk the path to Buddhahood as well. So what does he give away? Okay. This includes his wealth, grain, that means food, the contents of his storehouses and granaries, gold, silver, money jewels, true pearls, lapis lazuli, conch shells, jade, coral, and other such things, precious jewels, necklaces, bodily adornments, elephants, horses, carriages, servants and workers, cities and villages, parks, forests, viewing terraces, wives, consorts, sons, daughters, members of his inner and outer retinue, and all other sorts of precious jewels and means of amusement. Meaning anything that has any value to anyone, you are able to give away. So sometimes people, when they read passages like this, they look at giving away family members, like wives or even husbands, but usually it is wives, consorts, sons, and daughters. And people have they wonder, how are you able to give away family members? Like, are they yours to give? Well, think of it this way. Think of it as most people have certain expectations for people they care about. So like if you have children, you have certain expectations of the children, and it is very, very hard to give them the freedom to be happy, to pursue whatever they want so that they are happy instead of making you happy. Okay, so that's one way of understanding giving away. All right. Okay. Says he's also willing. He is willing to also give even his head, eyes, hands, feet, blood, flesh, bones, marrow, and any other parts of his own body, bestowing all of these things without any selfish cherishing, and bestowing all these things in quest of the vast wisdom of all Buddhas. This is what constitutes the perfection of relinquishing or generosity carried out by the Bodhisattva dwelling on the first ground. Okay. Then moving on, it says, what this Bodhisattva diligently cultivates, the making of offerings to all Buddhas, the teaching and transforming of living beings and all good roots from cultivating the dharmas or purification of the grounds, he completely transfers to the ground of all wisdom, becoming progressively more bright and pure, subdued, compliant and accomplished, and capable of acting in accord with his intent. Isn't that such a nice way of the last sentence? Capable of acting in accord with his intent. That means whatever you want, whatever you really want, you are able to behave in that way. Most of us, we want something, but then our habits get in the way, like Ron's question about how do we deal with our unwholesome habits. So if you notice, right in the middle of the paragraph, it said he completely transfers to the ground of all wisdom. So one thing about understanding transference, to most people, transference is like a magical word. You transfer merit. We don't really understand what transfer merit means, but we have confidence that it does something. It's something magical. We transfer merit, and some of us believe that transferring merit actually goes to that person. Although we do not have a mechanism of understanding. At the lowest level, all right, without going into the so-called magical realm, because whether that happens or not, in the sutras, we can look at it. But at the lowest level of understanding what transference is just another way of saying why you are doing something. Okay, so when you say I do this and I transfer the merit to the Pure Land, I want to be reborn in the Pure Land, it means you are practicing that thing, either reciting the Buddha's name or practicing generosity. And if you transfer it to the Pure Land, it means that you're doing it in order to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land. Okay, so that's what transference means. Transference is, in other words, the reason why. Okay, so that's one way, or actually the best way, if you ask me, to understand what transference is. Okay, you understand? All right, so next we will look at how, because Ron had a question a few weeks ago about how can someone practice to the point where you can even give up your own body. For some people, even giving up like 10 cents is very difficult. We have many stories. The Buddha gave many stories about some people who are so stingy that they can't even spend any money on themselves. And the Buddha said, no, that shouldn't be the case. Buddha said, if you have money, you should be generous to your friends, your own family. You shouldn't, you should make proper use of the money. So you should treat your friends, you should treat yourself, you shouldn't be selfish. And also practice generosity with the Sangha, because that's how you create merit. So let's look at how the Buddha practices gradually to the point that you can, do the ultimate forms of giving. Okay. So this is from a text called The Perfection of Giving by Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. There are 3 levels to giving. This text is actually, Shufu had the first 5 monastics, and he came to the US. So, what's his? How can I forget his name? Anyway, one of the first 5, bhikshu, a monk, translated this text from the Sanskrit text. So the translation goes is, giving may be of lesser, middling, or superior quality. From the lesser is born the middling, from the middling is born the superior. What does that mean? It means it's a gradual process. You practice generosity based on what you can first. And then as you get used to it, or as you taste the flavor of generosity, then it helps you when you feel the joy of giving or sharing. Because if you do it well, there's actually no greater joy than sharing with people, especially the things that you really like, then it becomes more natural and it's easier to progress. It doesn't feel like you are progressing, but that's actual progress. Yeah. So it's not a sacrifice. It doesn't feel like a sacrifice, giving up what you like. So the text says, if one draws upon drink, food, or coarse things, and employs a weak mind in giving, this is what is known as lesser giving. If one practices giving and it transforms and increases such that one is able to take clothing or precious goods and use them in one's giving, this constitutes bringing forth the middling from the lesser. So it's very easy, it's step by step. It says, when the mind of giving transforms and increases such that there is nothing whatsoever which one cherishes as too dear or difficult to give, so that one is then able to employ one's head, eyes, blood, flesh, country, wealth, wives, and sons, exhaustively using them all in one's giving, this constitutes bringing forth the superior from the middling. There are stories in the Jataka from the Buddha himself, where kings actually give up their what's a kingship? What do you call a king that has the power to rule over a country? And what is that? Anyway, there are kings who actually give it up. Now they find someone who they think is a better fit for the people, who can rule the country better for the improvement, to improve the lives of the people, and they actually relinquish their duties to people, or they want to become a monastic, and so they find someone responsible and they give their country away. So let's look at what is lesser level giving. So this is from the Buddha's past life. In Bodhisattva Nagarjuna uses Shakyamuni Buddha's past lives as an example, because Shakyamuni Buddha didn't start away by giving his body. No, he started like us, like regular people, giving what he could, and slowly working his way up. So he says, take for example, when Shakyamuni Buddha first brought forth the aspiration for Bodhi, he was the king of a great country who was named Brilliance. In seeking after the Buddha path, he performed a lesser level of giving. Okay, so the text doesn't say what was it lesser level. Maybe he gave away food, something that he that didn't really bother him. So the text didn't give an example, and the text says, when he transformed and took on his next body, that means after he died and was reborn, he next became a potter who was able to make gifts of bathing implements and rock honey condiments to another Shakyamuni Buddha. So it was so long ago, there was another Buddha named Shakyamuni Buddha and his Bhikshu Sangha. Subsequently, he changed bodies again and next became the daughter of a great elder who made offerings of lambs to Kaudinya Buddha. All sorts of instances such as this constitute what is meant by the Bodhisattva's practice of lesser level giving. Okay, so there's lesser level. Then in a former life as a son of an elder, he made offerings of robes to Great Voice Buddha. Once that Buddha had crossed into extinction or nirvana, he erected 90 stupas, so in the Buddha's honor. Afterwards, he changed bodies again and became the king of a great country who made an offering to Lion Buddha of a canopy composed of the 7 precious things. Subsequently, he then took on a body wherein he became a greater elder who made an offering to Marvelous Eyes Buddha of supremely fine buildings and marvelous flowers created from the 7 precious things. All sorts of instances such as this constitute what is known as the Bodhisattva's practice of middling level giving. So this is considered middle level, where you give away treasures, like actual treasure. It can take on any form as long as in that culture, in that period, people regard those things as being very valuable. Okay. Then at superior level now, it says, now take for example, when Shakyamuni Buddha was in a former life was a rishi. A rishi is how you say? A rishi is in Taoism they call it immortal. Someone who practices meditation to the point where they get some or five of the five spiritual powers. It says on seeing Kaundinya Buddha, who was handsome, upright, and exceptionally marvelous, he threw himself down off a mountain in front of that Buddha. His body remained unharmed and he then stood off to one side. So in order to pay his respects to the Buddha, he didn't care about his body, apparently, according to this. I tried to find the story, the background for more of this. I haven't been able to find it yet. If anyone knows of this and knows where to find it, please let me know if it's a Chinese text, for example. Because I'm not sure whether he had the spiritual ability, then he threw himself down, and because of his spiritual ability, he wasn't hurt, or he didn't care at all for his body, and then he just, threw himself down the cliff. Anyway, the principle is that he did not care for his body, and he just wanted to pay respects for the Buddha. Okay, there's another example of superior level giving, which is where the Buddha led in a former life. And this is, I think this, if I'm not mistaken, this is where he actually received the prediction that he will become Shakyamuni Buddha in the future. He saw a Buddha and he laid his hair down. So the Buddha was walking along the road. I think there was water on the road, or a hole with water on the road. And at that time, Shakyamuni Buddha had long hair. So he laid his hair on the road so the Buddha could walk on his hair instead of walking on the wet patch. Yeah. Then it says, again, take for example, he who beings delight in seeing Bodhisattva, who used his own body as a lamp in making offerings to sun and moonlight virtue Buddha. All sorts of examples such as these of not cherishing one's own body and life in making offerings to the Buddhas constitute the Bodhisattva's practice of superior level giving. So this is how you end up at superior level. And the next slide says, this is what is meant by the Bodhisattva's three kinds of giving. If there is a being who has just brought forth the aspiration to achieve Buddhahood, who takes up the practice of giving, he or she too may be just like this. So you start up gradually. First, he may use drink and food in his giving. When the mind of giving transforms so that it increases, he will be able to take even the flesh of his own body and give it. So the important thing to note is that when they do certain things, certain forms of giving that normal people cannot comprehend, for them at their level, it is a natural thing to do. Okay, maybe not so. It's still it's not natural, but they feel like it is the right thing that they should do in that way of natural. Okay. Yeah. So it says, first, he may use all manner of fine condiments in his giving. So this refers to food. Later, when the mind transforms and increases in its strength, he may be able to give even the blood from his own body. At first, he may employ paper, ink, and scriptures in his giving, while also making offerings to the masters of Dharma of robes, drink, food, and the four kinds of offerings. Then finally, when he has gained the Dharma body, for the sake of an incalculable number of beings, he may speak many varieties of Dharma and so carry forth the giving of Dharma. Okay, so the next slide is very important. Then finally, when he has gained the Dharma body, okay, what does this mean? Okay, I'll just read the second sentence. All sorts of cases such as this illustrate the development of dana or generosity from within the practice of dana paramita, or the paramita of generosity. So that's a key word there, the Dharma body. It is said that at the when someone who can meditate and reach the fourth level of dhyana in their meditation, at that stage, because your mind is so pure and that you are able to perform certain things that normal people cannot do. And that enables you to, for example, like there are cases where there are people who immolate themselves, who set themselves on fire, but as the fire consumes them, they remain unmoved. That means the immense pain that someone is supposed to be feeling does not affect them. That's at the level of the fourth dhyana and above. And then the Dharma body is another level altogether. The Dharma body is where your practice reaches a point where you, your understanding and the way you see the way the world is, your body coming and going, and the results of giving. At that stage, you can give your body freely, and you know what you're doing. Yeah, I think that's a keyword. You know what you're doing at that stage. Okay, all right. So I only have a few slides more to go. So I hope there will be more questions from everyone today. Okay, so how do we get to the level of a bodhisattva? Okay, how does one become a bodhisattva? And this will help answer partly Ron's question. Okay, so who becomes a bodhisattva? So this is taken from the 10 grounds chapter, the first ground, but it is in the beginning of the first ground. So it's not, technically you're not a bodhisattva yet. This is what happens when you're very, very close to a bodhisattva. So it's still normal. Like I was maybe not normal, but you know, you're where we are, kind of like where we are. So Buddha says, sons of the Buddha, suppose there is a being who has deeply planted roots of goodness, which is what we're doing right now, planting roots of goodness, well cultivated the practices, well accumulated the provisions facilitating realization of the path, practice well the making of offerings to the Buddhas, well accumulated the white dharmas of pristine purity, been skillfully drawn forth by the good spiritual guide, well purified his resolute intentions, established himself in the vast resolve, means the resolve to save living beings. So we continue, it says, develop vast understanding, and who has brought forth presently manifest kindness and compassion. Okay, so you have all these qualities. And why do you do it? So it says, having done so for the sake of the quest to acquire the knowledge of the Buddha, gaining the 10 powers, realizing the great fearlessness, for the sake of gaining the Buddha's Dharma of uniformly equal regard for all, that means you are able to treat everyone like the Buddha, coming to the rescue of all worlds, purifying the great kindness and great compassion, gaining the knowledge that knows everything without exception throughout the 10 directions, bringing about the unimpeded purification of all Buddha lands, knowing all 3 periods of time in a single instant, and fearlessly turning the great wheel of Dharma. Okay, imagine having all this, but you're not a bodhisattva yet. Okay, but you're very close. Okay, it says, son of the Buddha, the bodhisattva's generation of such resolve takes great compassion as foremost, takes wisdom as its predominant condition, is subsumed within skillful means, is sustained by the most superior resolute intentions, is aided by the measureless powers of the Tathagata or the Buddha, is accompanied by skillful contemplation and an assessment of being, strength of courage and strength of knowledge, is implemented with the directly manifested unimpeded knowledge, is accordant with spontaneous knowledge, is able to take on all dharmas of the Buddha in using wisdom in transformative teaching, and is as vast as the Dharma realm, as ultimately extensive as empty space, and so enduring as to reach the very end of future time. All right, you all got all of those? Okay. Son of the Buddha, when the Bodhisattva first brings forth this resolve, he immediately, okay, this is where there's a line that's drawn between now you're Bodhisattva and before you're not, that line. What happens? He steps beyond the grounds of the common person, enters the station of the Bodhisattva, takes birth into the clan of the Tathagatas, becomes such that no one can claim his lineage is possessed of any fault, leaves behind worldly destinies, enters the world transcending path. There's a few more to go, but this gives an idea of why. Okay, let me finish and then I'll go back to my thought. Acquires the Bodhisattva dharmas, abides in the Bodhisattva abodes, equally enters the 3 periods of time, and becomes definitely bound to realize the unexcelled Bodhi in the lineage of the Tathagatas. That means he's bound to become a Buddha, he just has a bit more work to do. The Bodhisattva who dwells in Dharma such as this is known as one who dwells on the ground of joyfulness, or the first ground. This on account of his being imperturbable. That means nothing can shake his joy, his happiness, his sense of well-being. So reading all this, okay, and then if you read texts about the things that you have to go through to become an arahat, then you realize how vast the difference is. Okay, how great the difference is between an arahat and a bodhisattva on just the first ground. Even before you get on the first ground, you develop all those intentions and your heart. There's a huge difference. It's not easy at all. Yeah, for a person to be able to develop themselves to that point. Okay. So coming to Ron's question, which is how does one get rid of bad habits that pop up in one's thought? So Ron's initial other question was about dealing. Ron, you had a different question earlier when you asked. It seemed different.
No, it was still about bad habits. It was like you talked about not having aversion to that bad habit, but using wisdom. And then I said, well, suppose your bad habits pop up in thoughts. How do you get rid of those thoughts? That's how this was a follow-up on that question.
Okay, so the reason why I mentioned not having aversion is because aversion or disgust is considered an unskillful mental state. So when you practice, you want to be able to progress not because of disgust or aversion. If you recognize that something is bad for you and you don't want to have anything to do with it, it is a different feeling from disgust. Disgust is, disgust has unskillful qualities because when someone else, if you see someone else with the same unwholesome habit, and if you have disgust towards that habit, you tend to develop disrespectful or unwholesome feelings for that person. So that's why disgust is just one way of understanding why disgust or aversion is not a good emotion to use for developing wholesome habits. Okay, so that's one. Let me see. I was thinking of something else. Let me see if it's relevant. Just give me a second to think about it. For example, for monks, for monastics, there is a contemplation called mindfulness of the body. And I'm not going to it's part of the recollections that we are going through, recollection of the body. Because if it's a monastic practice, we won't be going into detail about it. But part of the practice is is being aware of all the different components of the body. For example, like the nails, the hair, the different liquids in the joints, in the stomach, and things like that. It is an actual meditative exercise for monks. And then they take it one step further, where the monastic is introduced to the body as it goes through different stages of decay. All right, so like in Thailand, they have visits to the morgue. How do you pronounce it? Morgue, the morgue. Yeah, I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly. You know, where they have dead bodies, and then, but it's a practice where you need a good teacher, because the moment the teacher sees that the meditator has disgust, the practice stops. Then the practice may not even continue, because it may not be the right practice, because the point of the practice is to see the body for what it is, not to develop aversion, but to develop dispassion. So dispassion through wisdom rather than aversion through disgust. Two different things. You may kind of achieve, like you think you may kind of achieve the same result, but it's a very, very different way of getting there. One is skillful, one is unskillful. Okay, so that's one way of this. I'm going to talk about Ron's question. The other way, okay, is first you have to know what bad habits you have, and then secondly you have to know what the Dharma has to say about the bad habit. For example, normal people, if you have an issue with anger, they usually say, oh, you need to develop more patience. Yeah. So when you're angry, they say, oh, you must be more patient. Count 1 to 10. Those sometimes they help. Okay. Telling people to develop more patience when they're in the middle of anger doesn't help at all. But distracting exercises like counting 1 to 10, because what you're doing is you're interrupting the chain of thoughts in your mind. So instead of one thought of anger leading to another thought of anger, you're interrupting that chain. Hopefully it will make a difference. Okay, but not all the time. So why doesn't developing patience work when it comes to anger? Because patience is not an antidote to anger. Buddhism doesn't work that way. How the practices in Buddhism work is the right practice addresses the problem at its root. So when it comes to anger, what is the right practice to have? Loving kindness. So when you develop loving kindness, which is what we're all studying right now in the last few weeks, how to develop loving kindness. If you can develop loving kindness for yourself and then develop loving kindness for people, and you do it properly for say a particular person or everyone, then the issue of anger will not even come up, because anger will not arise. Why will anger not arise? Because you have loving kindness. So there's no need to even talk about patience. Why? Because there's no anger at all. And why there's no anger? Because the roots of anger is overcome by your practice of loving kindness. All right, Ron? So when we have bad habits, we have to understand the corresponding antidote to the bad practice and how to practice it. So for example, selfishness, generosity, and loving kindness is for anger. And there is a whole list more, which I don't have. I can prepare if anyone's interested. So that's kind of how practice works in Buddhism. Okay? All right. So it depends on the bad habit, Ron. Okay. So next, we've gone through in terms of mindfulness, of renunciation or generosity. We've talked about generosity in terms of material gifts, treasures, and dharma. So we've done those two. now, since we have time, we will look at abandonment of the afflicting emotions. In other words, being able to give up what causes our suffering, our afflictions, what makes us unhappy, including the things that we think makes us happy when in fact it does not. Okay, so this is what it means in terms of the abandoning of afflicting emotions. Shufu, I remember Shufu in one of his talks, he said something like, give me all your afflictions. Yeah, all your bad habits, give it to me. Something like that. So what is this all about? It says to destroy, to reject all the afflicting emotions from the 3 fetters up to the 98 latent tendencies is called abandonment. By recollecting the rejection of these things as one rejects venomous snakes or like shackles, one acquires salvation and joy. Furthermore, recollection of the abandoning of the disturbing emotions also enters into recollection of the Dharma. Okay, so let's break this down a bit. It says, let me see, to destroy, to reject all the afflicting emotions from the 3 fetters. Okay, what are the 3 fetters? There's actually a list of 10 fetters. And the first 3, is number 1, the mistaken belief in the existence of a self in relation to the skandhas. Okay, what are the skandhas? The skandhas of, I always cannot memorize this. Form, feeling, formation, consciousness, and form, feeling, formation, consciousness, and that's the number 5. Can someone please help me by looking up Google?
Cognition, Master. Cognition.
Cognition. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, Gary and Melinda, thank you so much. What are the 5 skandhas? Basically, the 5 skandhas represent who we take for ourselves, which is a mistaken view. It is our eyes, our nose, our tongue, body, and finally our mind. So our 6 senses. The 5 skandhas represent, or the 6 senses represent the only way we can interact with our world around us and our thoughts and thinking. Apart from the 5 skandhas, anything else, unless you meditate and your mad mind stops, the 5 skandhas are all we have. So because of that, we cannot help but take the 5 skandhas. We are helpless, okay? We cannot help but assume the 5 skandhas to be us. Because if we don't assume the 5 skandhas are us, what else is there? Because we don't know of nothing else. That's how confused we are. Shufu says you are mistaking a thief. You say at night you hear a sound. It's a burglar, a thief coming to rob you, your house, but you think it's your son coming back in the middle of the night. Another phrase that Shufu uses is mistaking fish eyes for pearls. Yeah. So it's like when you dream, okay? When you dream, you can see things, you can hear things, you are interacting with people in your dream. But if someone tells you, oh, everything that you are going through right now is false, it's just your mind making things up. You know, you do not, it is very hard to believe because you don't even know that you're dreaming. And then when there's a sound in real life, like an alarm clock in your dream, you may think that it might be a phone or the TV or something else. So in your when you're dreaming, there's a distorting effect happening through your senses. And it distorts what's actually going on in real life, and it transforms into something else in your dream. From the point of view of the sages, people who have awakened, that's what's happening to us right now. There's a distorting effect that our skandhas impose on how we see the world. But we are not aware of it because we have no other frame of reference. So we take our bodies, our minds to be real. So throughout history, there's a lot of philosophers that try to find out the meaning of life. Who are we? Are we our mind? Are we our body? Are we a combination of both? Are we consciousness? Are we the soul? This and that, etc., etc., etc. This is the first factor. Okay, the mistaken belief in the existence of a self in relation to the five aggregates. So the mistaken notion of a soul, or taking the consciousness to be us. So that's the first factor. What's the second factor? The second factor is a wrong view of attachment to rites and rituals, thinking that if you perform a ceremony or a special ceremony, like there are a lot of ceremonies going on. They are performing sacrifices, for example, will free you from unwholesome karma. So that's a wrong view. Okay. And because you rely on the ceremony instead of relying on cause and effect. Instead of relying on transforming your bad habits, you think by doing something, that act of doing something generates merit and it absorbs you, it removes your bad karma. No, it doesn't work that way. So that's the second factor. Third factor is doubt about the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so these three, doubts about the Dharma, thinking there's a self in relation to our body and mind, and an attachment or reliance on ceremonies and rituals, is what is meant by the three factors. And who is free of these three factors? When you become a first stage arhat, when you become a stream enterer, you are free from this. And then when you're free from this confused way of looking at life and looking at yourself, then when you practice a Noble Eightfold Path, it really is the Noble Eightfold Path because you're already on the path of the Noble. People like us, when we practice the Noble Eightfold Path, we are just practicing the Eightfold Path. Because we are not noble yet, we are not sages yet, we are not doing it in a noble way. Why? Because we still have wrong views. Then after that, there are 7 more factors that are eradicated when you become an arhat. I'll just quickly go through them because I've gone through them before. Desire for satisfaction from the sensory input that we get, that's 1. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5 is hatred. Okay, hatred, greed, and ignorance goes away. Number 6 is number 6 is very more at the level of subconscious, is a yearning for existence. That means like after death, when you're confused, there's a strong sense of wanting to live on. I think, yeah. So the sense of wanting to exist, to be reborn, to have a consciousness, to have a body, is number 6. Number 7 is, wanting to be reborn in the higher realms of heaven, where you are more consciousness only. And then number 8 is pride. Pride goes away, the feeling of feeling superior to others. Number 9 is mental restlessness that impedes concentration. And number 10 is ignorance regarding the 4 noble truths, whereby what is not self, you take as self, what is not wholesome, you take as wholesome, and what is painful, you take as pleasurable. So that is a very confused way of looking at things. So when you become a 4th stage arhat, these 10 factors all go away. Okay, but the text talks about the first 3, which is when you become a stream enterer or a first level arhat. Okay, so there is a question next. It says, if it enters into the recollection of the Dharma, which we have studied before, it says, why speak of it again here? So the answer is, abandonment of the disturbing emotions is something splendid, difficult to acquire. I mean, you have to become a first stage arhat. Peerless and immense. This is why it is mentioned separately. Furthermore, there is a difference between recollection of the Dharma and recollection of abandonment. Okay. Actually, Ron's question is kind of to do with this, because our bad habits actually lead to our own affliction. Yeah. To recollect the Dharma is to recollect the Dharma of the Buddha, the foremost of all good Dharmas. To recollect abandonment is to recollect the disturbing emotions and sins insofar. So sins means transgressions or unwholesome skills or actions, insofar as they are quickly rejected. Since their aspects are distinct, the two recollections are different. For these many reasons, the practitioner should recollect abandonment of the disturbing emotions. This recollection constitutes the first practice of knowledge as dhyana, where there is a risk of experiencing pride. So this is it. That's all the text has to have about abandonment of afflicting emotions. I think this happens gradually as you progress along the path. As you become more mindful of wholesome skills and unwholesome skills, this happens in the course of practice. So I'm not sure if this happens in the course of practice. Okay, let me see. We have about close to 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask anyone, are there any questions? I have more slides, but this is the end of this section. Yeah. Anything you want to ask? No? Yes?
Yes, Dharma Master, I have one question.
Yes, thank you.
Regarding the second, is it the second or the third factor that you were mentioning? That
Yes.
you cut away with rituals, and all this. So
Yes.
does that mean that if someone thinks that he is under a spell or is under a bad luck period, or under black magic, perform on the person. So does that mean that we do not go for any purification rituals or whatsoever?
Okay, so your question is, say if you think someone is under, like, being possessed and
possessed or black magic, or say having a bad luck period.
Okay.
Things don't go his or her way, so they want to go and get people to perform rituals, purification rituals, that
Okay.
that some Buddhist schools have. They have those purification rituals. So do we do away with that?
Okay, this wrong view is very different. Okay, it may seem to be related, but this wrong view is actually it speaks of someone who has the idea that if they attend a ceremony or a certain way of doing something, like the way they bow or the way they perform offering incense, for example, that will remove their unwholesome deeds. Oh, you understand? So there are people or there are beliefs in this world that say if you sacrifice animals or you participate in certain rituals, it will remove your bad karma. So if you've done something bad, you killed people before or you cheat people, you think that by doing that act, it will remove your karma. This is what this wrong view refers to. So they think that just by doing that, they can be reborn in the heavens because they're being purified
I see.
of their own unwholesome actions.
Okay, I understand. So, Miss, this is a separate kind of ritual.
Yeah, so it's not saying, it's not it doesn't, how you say, it's not saying rituals and ceremonies are ineffective. It's saying, because if you go to Mahayana temple, there's a lot of rituals and ceremonies. It's saying that if you rely on a ritual or ceremony thinking that that alone will remove your will purify you and remove your unwholesome karma that you have done in the past, that is a wrong view.
Okay, understand.
Oh yeah, so a lot of, like, Buddhists in the beginning, I had a thought. I would think to myself, oh, I participated in like Tapichan, the Great Compassion Repentance today, and thinking that, oh, I've done, it has absolved, removed some of my bad karma, not understanding that it is only through transforming myself. So if I'm in the middle of the ceremony and I'm thinking about what to eat and what to do, all my unwholesome habits come and I'm just making plans for, so I'm just relying on the ceremony itself. That's a wrong view. But if I understand, oh, okay, great compassion repentance is about me recollecting my bad habits and trying my best to change because I want to, do wholesome things, and for everyone that is different. And then I use the ceremony as a way to be mindful of myself. And, then it is not the ceremony itself that has the efficacious nature, although it may be based on the sutra. The efficacious nature comes from me transforming myself, using the ceremony as the container for me to do that. That's the purpose of ceremonies. That's why we recite sutras, to give us the foundation of mindfulness for us to transform. By doing that alone, doesn't do anything. So that's why in the Sixth Petrak Sutra, there was this monk, what was his name? Was it Fahai or something? He went to see the Sixth Petrak. He was very arrogant. So when he bowed to the Sixth Petrak, his forehead did not touch the floor. So I'm not sure whether it's literally his forehead did not touch the floor, or it's just a nice poetic way of saying that he still had a lot of arrogance. And so the Sixth Petrak called him out. Sixth Petrak said, "Why are you so arrogant? What is your practice?" And then he, in a very arrogant way, he said, "Oh, I have recited." Oh, okay. All right. So I'll just continue from there. So basically what the Sixth Petrak asked him, "Why are you so arrogant?" And then the monk said, and the Sixth Petrak asked him, "What is your practice?" And the monk said, "Oh, I've recited the Lotus Sutra 3,000 times." And it's not easy to recite the Lotus Sutra. I'm not sure about the Chinese, but I don't think you can recite. You could maybe the whole day recite it in English. I think it's possible. Yeah, I think it's possible. So to recite the Lotus Sutra 3,000 times is not easy. And so the monk had every right to be proud of himself. And then the Sixth Petrak pointed out to him that he totally missed the point of the Lotus Sutra. Why? Because he took pride in the practice of reciting, but he never, the fact that he was still very prideful and arrogant showed that he did not understand what the practice is all about. So when we think that the practice, when we mistake the practices such as reciting the Buddha's name and reciting sutras, bowing for the actual practice, that's a wrong view. Those are practices, yes, but they only form the foundation for us to transform our bad habits. If not, then, if practice is that simple, just bow or just recite, or then anyone could do it, but you get to become a Bodhisattva, you become an Arhat through changing unskillful habits into skillful habits. That's why it's so difficult. That's why practicing is so hard, because you are changing yourself. When your karma comes up, it is emotions, and to change in the midst of emotion is very, very difficult. You can try and find out for yourself. So practice is really hard from that aspect. Okay, reciting Buddha's name, meditating, and all that are all easier. Yeah. Okay. So before we end, does anyone else have anything? No? Okay. Sorry? Was that a question?
I posted a question on the chat. It had to do with in the words of wisdom. One day they said something about the mind to mind. There was a great transmission of the great Dharma. So I was kind of curious. Nobody ever explained to me what mind to mind means, and I made up my own theory of what it means. So I asked the question: does mind to mind mean telepathy?
Oh, no. Okay. So when they say mind to mind, for example, when we had the first Petrarch, which is Mahakashyapa, during the Buddha's time, he was the first Petrarch. What happened was the Buddha held up a flower, and let me see what happened. The Buddha held up a flower, and then I think Mahakashyapa smiled, and that was like the first mind-to-mind transmission. So mind-to-mind transmission doesn't mean that some kind of special knowledge is being transferred, like you download something from the internet. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means someone at a certain level recognizes your level and acknowledges it. It certifies you. That's just what it means. You get the knowledge yourself because the wisdom is from within us. We carry the wisdom with us all the time. Okay, Shifu says in the Lotus Sutra, it says everywhere we go, we have the wish fulfilling pearl with us. It's just that our wisdom is obscured by the distorting nature of our five skandhas. And so we do not know that we have the Buddha nature within all of us. So when we uncover our Buddha nature, when we get a certain level, Shifu says you have to find someone to certify you. That's the mind-to-mind transmission. It means that there's someone who is at the same level or higher, and they see you and they say yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Sure. So let me use that example where the sixth patriarch, before he had a meeting, he had this meeting in the fifth patriarch's room, and the fifth patriarch, so they said in there, I guess I misunderstood what that mind-to-mind transfer was, because you kind of said that, well, it's an understanding that you know what it means, right? So he was the fifth patriarch, I think, taught him about the Diamond Sutra or something like that, and he got it, and he transferred the Dharma to him that way.
No, he didn't transfer the Dharma. He just spoke Dharma for the sixth Petrarch, and then the sixth Petrarch got enlightened, and then the fifth Petrarch acknowledged his.
Okay. But it wasn't transferring. It's not like that analogy I said. It's like copying the contents of one disk drive to another disk drive, right?
Yeah, it's not like that at all. Because if it works that way, then the Buddhas would make all of us enlightened.
Oh, okay.
Of course, the Buddha has certain abilities that, for example, some of the monks, when they're with the Buddha could take them to certain places, like the Buddha's half brother. The Buddha, in trying to teach him, brought him to the hells, brought him to the heavens. Yes, they can do that, but they cannot give you wisdom. You have to uncover the wisdom yourself. They cannot take away your bad habits. You have to develop wholesome skills by yourself. Yeah. So when you get enlightened, it is not because the Buddha gives you the enlightenment. It is not the Buddha's to give. It is yours to uncover. You have to work at uncovering it. No one else can do it for you. Yeah, just like eating. I can't eat. No one can eat to make other people full. So it's kind of like that kind of direction. Yeah. But once you are awakened, then you need someone to certify, to acknowledge that you have gained that level. Yeah. So that's when that happens. That's the mind to mind, and usually mind to mind I think is used more for like patriarchs. When Shofu met Elder Master Xiyin Lao Sang, and there was that thus it is. That's it. They don't talk a lot. They just acknowledge, sometimes wordlessly, and that's the mind to mind transmission. Yeah, it is not a transference of knowledge or wisdom. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Okay. All right. Let's transfer merit. Slideshow. If I can find the encounter about Rebel Mahakashyapa was first Petra, yeah, that incident between him and the Buddha. I think the Buddha just held up a flower. I'm not sure who smiled. I think Buddha held up a flower, Mahakashyapa smiled, and because he understood at that moment what the Buddha was doing, and that was the mind-to-mind transmission, and that's how it became the first Petra. Something like that. Yeah. Okay, dedication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, just before we do the three vows, I just thought of something. In the Sixth Petrarch Sutra, they were chasing after the sixth Petrarch in order to get the sash and the bowl that was given to him by the fifth Petrarch, because for them, the efficacy of the Petrarchship was to be found in the sash and the bowl. This attachment to the form is similar to the wrong view of attachment to rites and rituals. So it's the same principle. Is not understanding where true wisdom comes from and thinking that it's in a particular object or in a particular ceremony. Okay. All right. Let's do three bows to the Buddha. Okay, hold on. Let me change my sound. Okay, three bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Rebel Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, everyone. See you next week. Amitofo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dharma Master.